Start with Trey Yingst. He is live on the ground in southern Israel. And Trey, what are we learning about those freed hostages?
Yeah, John, I just want to quickly tell you the camera was panned up to the sky. There was a massive barrage that just came off the Gaza Strip. One of those rockets intercepted in southern Israel. But we do have some breaking news for you. Fox News can independently confirm that 2 American hostages were released from Gaza. These hostages were taken on October 7th by Hamas militants who entered southern Israel. They were dragged back into the Gaza Strip. You can hear those explosions in the distance as that fire continues. They were dragged into the Gaza Strip and held for nearly 2 weeks. But international efforts have been underway since then, trying to free as many people as possible. We have to be careful with our attribution here and the sourcing behind this, but we have been able to confirm by a source outside of Hamas that this deal did go through and 2 American hostages have been released into Egypt. This is significant and a major development. These are the first 2 hostages to be released. Just pan the camera here. There's some sort of fire coming from Gaza, and you can see that explosion there. That did not look like a rocket. It might have been it might have been a shell, actually, that was fired by the Israelis. But it gives you a sense here, as we're getting this news in, John, there's a lot of movement along the border. And that explosion there, warplanes are overhead right now. It would not be surprising if you see any sort of airstrikes behind me. John?
Let me ask you just another little question, if I could, Trey. It's obviously dangerous where you are. I don't want you to expose yourself. But apparently this hostage was released because of negotiations between Qatar and Hamas. But that would mean that there are still 201 hostages at least being held. What about the fate of the others?
Yeah, absolutely. The Qataris have been working behind the scenes on a variety of issues, from humanitarian aid to hostage release. I don't want to get too deep into the specifics of this release, but I can tell you that we can confirm there are still 201 hostages inside Gaza, possibly more. The Israelis spoke with us earlier today, top military officials saying there are between 100 and 200 people still missing from southern Israel. Some of those bodies may never be recovered. There still could be some people who are alive, but in Gaza, just not yet accounted for. And that's part of why the Israelis are making this calculation. I'm told, though, by my producer just now, we checked with the Israelis following our independent confirmation of the hostage release tonight from Gaza, 2 American citizens. The families have not yet been notified, which is why we do not have the names. But the initial statement, according to reports, that, again, it's 2 American citizens. I don't even want to get into the gender of the initial reports because we've only been able to confirm that these are 2 U.S. citizens. But again, a significant development as thousands of Israeli troops remain on the border with Gaza. The anticipation is growing about a possible ground offensive into the Gaza Strip. And I just want to turn the camera here again. You can see likely more fire into Gaza and a small explosion there. If we have it, I do want to play for you some sound that we got earlier from Israel's Defense Minister Yoav Gallant. Gallant spoke earlier today discussing the timeline for this ground operation and the regional war that is developing. You hear an explosion there, activity along the border. But Gallant spoke about what this means. He said this is not days, weeks, or months, but we are looking at a much larger operation. Take a listen.
We'll reach the point that there is a completely different security regime here, that we have complete freedom of action, and that there is no threat from within the Gaza Strip. This will not take a day nor a week, and unfortunately, not a month.
Now, throughout the day, there were more rocket fire coming from the Gaza Strip into southern and central Israel. 14 days into this conflict, Hamas and Islamic Jihad have maintained the ability to target major population centers here. I want to show you what it was like earlier today. We do have a small piece from this position in the daylight, but I will stay on the bridge with the producers just in case we get more incoming here. We'll come back to you right there. But take a look. Minute by minute, the Israeli Air Force pounds the Gaza Strip. You can see the smoke rising up from the horizon. The Israeli jets overhead continue to hammer these positions along the border. You can see rockets coming off of the Gaza Strip. This type of fire has been going on throughout the day. A ground operation is imminent. but we do understand the Israelis want to hit as many targets as they can before that takes place. I do want to draw your attention to northern Israel because there have been significant developments today. The Lebanese militant group Hezbollah continues to fire on Israeli positions and communities. The town of Kiryat Shmona, around 20,000 people are being evacuated as a result of the tension along the border. Hezbollah has fired rockets. The Israelis have responded with airstrikes. And then earlier today, there was an infiltration attempt where you actually had Hezbollah militants trying to cross into Israel. The Israelis tell Fox News they used an airstrike to kill 3 of those Hezbollah operatives just along the border in southern Lebanon. So it gives you a sense of just how active the southern front and the northern front is, and that third front opening up in the West Bank. Overnight in the West Bank city of Tulkarm, 13 Palestinians were killed. We need to go because there could be mortar fire here. Just stay with me. Everyone.
Leave the camera.
Yep, leave the camera. Just stay with me. We got to move because we're very close. I can hear you. Get in. That's mortar. Get in. Get cover. Everyone in. I can hear you, John.
Okay. Sanders with us as well, Trey.
Trey, to be safe first and foremost, you and your crew. If you can keep talking to us, let me just read you
Listen
off.
to our camera.
Yep. Okay. You left the camera there. We can see the shot. Trey, there's some wires crossing right now. The Palestinian Red Crescent, this is crossing on the Reuters wire, says that they've received a warning from Israeli forces to immediately evacuate a Gaza hospital. This is just crossing the wire right now. Also adding to that, let's see, Israel's Channel 13 is also confirming, by the way, that Hamas has released those 2 hostages. Trey, what else can you tell us about what's happening right now?
Yeah, absolutely. And so the Israelis continue, and we're going to take this off the sticks, guys. Just if you could take it off the sticks, Yaniv, and we're going to come down here. Just stay with us for a moment. So what you heard there, the whistle of incoming mortar fire. So those were indeed mortars that were fired at this position, and we are so close to the Gaza border. You have about 10 seconds to get to cover. So that plan that we just implemented there, we had discussed that beforehand. Leave the camera, get to a shelter and hard cover because this is very active here along the front. In terms of the evacuations, the Israelis have been increasing airstrikes. It has been more than a decade since we've seen this level of strikes conducted by the Israelis. And for the southern communities that have been evacuated or who were victims of that massacre last weekend, they've already been moved away. The evacuations continue in the north. And then when it comes to the evacuations inside Gaza, the Israelis are trying to alert civilians before they launch new airstrikes against heavily populated areas. We saw the misinformation that came out following that hospital explosion a few days ago. We very quickly spoke with the Israeli military that night, so we had the accurate information, but many others did not, and it sparked unrest across the Middle East. And that unrest is very dangerous given the boiling tension across the region that has started to spill over. You see Iran's proxies active and operating from Yemen, trying to fire drones and cruise missiles toward Israel. That fire intercepted by a U.S. naval ship. Also, Iranian-backed Iraqi Shia militias that are firing rockets toward American bases around Baghdad. And so this is very quickly becoming an active regional scene. And the last thing the Israelis need is more tension in the West Bank, for example, or other cities across the area that could make this already challenging and difficult situation even worse. John, Sandra?
Yeah, you know, I'm thinking that Hamas must be very pleased with itself that it put out that statement, which turned out to be, and that sounds like more mortars coming in, put out that statement, which was erroneous about the hospital explosion, blaming Israel. It was picked up by the global media and has completely inflamed tensions across the entire region. What we're waiting for, Trey, and we've been waiting now for more than a week, is the anticipated ground operation into Gaza. Do we have any more clarity? And I know that the IDF is very tight-lipped about any planning that they have, but is there any more clarity as to when that might actually occur?
There isn't a lot of clarity on that, and I think the release of 2 Americans tonight may delay that even further. The priority is diplomacy right now, trying to get as many people out that are being held hostage by Hamas, Islamic Jihad, and even smaller factions inside Gaza before a ground offensive would take place. We know, according to intelligence sources, that there are conversations going on at the highest level behind the scenes. Some of them are taking place in Cairo. Others are taking place in different locations. We're very careful, again, to protect sources in all of this because it's incredibly sensitive information. But the fact that 2 American citizens were released by Hamas tonight is a small but positive development in this horrific story. And so they will certainly try to get more people released ahead of a ground offensive. But troops are staging here along the border. It still is not a question of if, but rather when Israel enters Gaza, because they have one key goal, and that goal is to destroy Hamas, to demilitarize the Gaza Strip. But we have to keep in mind, Hamas is Iran's second largest proxy in the region. And so by destroying Hamas, Israel is destroying the ability for Iran to operate throughout this area. And it makes it incredibly challenging and uncertain for the days ahead because there is a real belief on the ground. And this is not just coming from Israeli officials that we talked to, it's coming from American officials that we've spoken with, other regional players, that they believe Hezbollah and these Iranian proxies throughout the region will immediately respond when Israel does enter Gaza. And that's part of the posture and why the alert level is so high, not just here in the south along the border with Gaza, but also in the north along the border with Lebanon and across this country, understanding that air defense systems, not just the Iron Dome, but David's Sling and the Arrow system, all have to be engaged because this regional conflict is quickly evolving.
Trey, thank you very much. Incredible reporting on the ground there as it's happening. And we'll get back to you shortly, Trey, as we continue to get updates on this hostage situation, as we can now confirm that 2 hostages have been released by Hamas. Per an Israeli source, but the family, Trey, has not yet been notified as you're reporting, so we do not have further details yet. We hope to shortly.